In a world where the unusual always catches the eye, Anna and Martin Bates seemed like visitors from another realm. Towering and powerful, almost mythical in stature, their very presence turned heads and silenced crowds. Together, they traveled across the country, billed as marvels of nature, human curiosities on display. But behind the spectacle of carnival lights and curious stares lay a far deeper story. One not only of extraordinary height, but of love, resilience, and quiet tragedy. Anna Haining Bates was born on August 6, 1846, among the windswept hills of Nova Scotia. Her parents, Anna Graham and Alexander Swan, were Scottish immigrants who brought with them the stoicism and grit of the Highlands. Raising 13 children was no small task, and Anna, the third in line, seemed at first like any other child. Except, perhaps, for one whisper that lingered in the village. The baby weighed 13 pounds at birth. Still, the true signs came later. By the age of 4, when most children are still struggling to reach doorknobs, Anna stood head and shoulders above her peers, already over a meter taller. At 15, she had reached an astonishing 7 feet in height, and she would keep growing. Something inside her body yearned upward, as if the sky itself was calling her higher. Later, doctors would diagnose gigantism, a disorder of the pituitary gland that sends growth hormones into overdrive. But in the 19th century, there was no diagnosis. Only mystery, only loneliness. And yet, within the Bates household, there was neither fear nor shame. Her father, a simple man with calloused hands and a gentle soul, carved her a special school desk when the regular one proved too small. He built a custom bed so she could stretch out without discomfort. These small acts, seemingly ordinary, were expressions of love, quiet testaments to dignity in a world that stared, pointed, laughed, or recoiled. Still, even the strongest family love couldn't shield Anna from the gaze of the world. Outside her home, she was not understood. She was showcased. That's how she found herself on stage. But Anna was never just a sideshow. She moved with grace, held herself with remarkable dignity, and carried within her a heart capable of deep love. It was this heart that one day responded to another like it, Martin Bates, as tall and tender as she was. Their story was never just a footnote in some old paper. It was a love story between two giants, not just in stature, but in spirit, who found each other in a world that looked up to them, but rarely looked into them. Their bond shone like a lighthouse in the fog, unwavering, luminous, and defiant in the face of hardship. But fate had its own script. What began as a tale of wonder soon turned to sorrow. Illness, loss, and grief unfolded behind the curtains. The very bodies that fascinated the crowds brought the couple quiet suffering. To be great, in size or in soul, sometimes means to be profoundly alone. Anna Bates lived a life that, like her frame, was larger than most, filled with both joy and sorrow. She never sought fame. She sought a place to belong, a place where she could simply be. Perhaps she found it in the heart of the man who loved her not for how high she stood, but for how deeply she felt. When Anna was born, no one could have guessed that this little girl from rural Nova Scotia would one day become a local legend, a subject of admiration, curiosity, and even controversy. In the beginning, everything seemed ordinary. She grew up on a farm, surrounded by fields, birdsong, and the earthy scent of soil. But it quickly became clear that Anna was growing differently. With each passing month, her body surged upward, as if it carried a secret the rest of the world had yet to understand. Whispers about the extraordinary girl spread faster than the winds off the bay. First came curious neighbors, then strangers from nearby towns. People gathered at the fence, peered through windows, or knocked hesitantly on the family's door, hoping for a glimpse of the so-called little giant. Local newspapers joined in the fascination. One even dubbed her the giant baby, a phrase both absurd and oddly tragic. Anna's family couldn't ignore the growing attention. And in it, they saw not just concern but also a chance. Life on the farm was unforgiving. Every child had a role to play, a way to contribute. Anna was no exception. Her clothes wore out faster than her mother could hem them. Shoes were a constant challenge, especially ones large enough to keep up with her ever-growing feet. Faced with harsh realities, the family made a difficult decision. Anna would travel to fairs, becoming a living attraction. Yes, the decision drew criticism. Some called it exploitation, putting a child on display for money. But the truth, as it often is, was more complicated. Anna was never left alone in crowded tents. Her parents stayed close, choosing safe venues where the line between curiosity and cruelty wasn't crossed. Historians believe that, despite their hardships, her family tried to protect what little normalcy and warmth they could. Outside the fairgrounds, Anna had a different kind of life. She cared for her younger siblings, devoured books with passion, and reached for creativity in whatever ways she could. Her childhood was far from ordinary, but she filled it with ordinary dreams, games, stories, small joys. And yes, she had a dream too. A simple, kind, very human one. The kind of dream all children treasure. But, as so often happens to those who stand too far apart from the crowd, that dream was not meant to be. When Anna was a little girl, she dreamed of becoming a teacher. She was drawn to knowledge, to the idea of sharing it with others, to the warm glow of schoolroom windows that seemed to hide a gentler, wiser world. But dreams don't always match reality, especially when you're different. She lived with her aunt in a strange town, hoping to get an education. But everything in that place felt hostile. The cramped classrooms with their low ceilings stifled her like a cage. People stared on the streets, whispered, pointed. Every glance felt like a needle. Her height, her unusual body, became a silent barrier between her and her dream. She felt awkward, isolated, out of place, and eventually, she let go of the idea of teaching. But fate, as it often does with those of strong spirit, had other plans. During her darkest moments, she had her grandmother, a woman with the quiet wisdom of ancient Scottish hills. "Hold your head high and be proud of where you come from," she would say. "You are a daughter of the Highlands." Those words became a lifeline, an anchor in the storm. They gave Anna the strength not just to endure, but to search for a place of her own in a strange and often unkind world. And she found it, though not where she had expected. In 1862, full of hope and uncertainty, Anna crossed the Atlantic and arrived in America. There, she accepted an offer that would change her life. She joined the troupe of P.T. Barnum's museum, performing as the Nova Scotia Giantess. The title might sound like mockery, but for Anna, it was a stage, a place where, for the first time, she could truly be herself. Barnum, ever the showman, knew how to draw a crowd. But Anna was no mere curiosity. Her extraordinary height became a source of wonder, not ridicule. She wasn't just on display, she had a voice. She performed scenes, including Lady Macbeth. She sang, played piano, answered questions from the audience, and shared her story, not twisted through someone else's lens, but her own, honest and true. That was the real transformation. Anna was no longer an object. She was a storyteller, a presence, a person. She earned $23 a week, a respectable sum at the time, roughly equivalent to nearly $500 today. She had a companion who traveled with her, and she earned royalties from her portraits sold to visitors, a rare and almost unheard of arrangement for a woman in show business then. Her contract was fair, thoughtfully written. Most importantly, her family no longer had to worry. Anna was safe. She held both her fate and her dignity in her own hands. And perhaps that was the dearest thing to her, that now she could speak for herself, not as a distorted tale in someone else's pamphlet, not as a curiosity in a cabinet of wonders, but as a woman who had walked the long road from humiliation to triumph. Anna no longer dreamed of being a schoolteacher, but in a way she still taught those who came to see her left a little kinder. Her dream had always been to teach, to share knowledge, to inspire, to be of use to others. But it wasn't in a classroom, as she might have once imagined, that this dream first came true. Instead, it happened in the most unexpected of places, the vibrant, bustling halls of Barnum's Museum, where wonders of the world stood side by side with the lives of extraordinary people. There, amid the noise and the curious crowds, Anna found a sense of purpose. These moments, far removed from traditional teaching, were some of the brightest in her life. She talked, explained, shared what she knew, and did it all with warmth and sincerity. But that joy was short-lived. In 1865, a roaring disaster struck. The museum was engulfed in a devastating fire. As flames consumed staircases and ceilings, Anna found herself trapped. Her body, weighing nearly 400 pounds, made it impossible for her to escape through the narrow windows like so many others. And yet, against all odds, 18 people risked their lives to save hers. They carried her out of the inferno, preserving her life at great danger to their own. Survival, however, did not mean being unscathed. The fire had taken everything she owned, her clothes, her books, even the smallest keepsakes. She was left with nothing. Anna was among the last to leave the burning building, not because she was slow, but because she had helped others escape before thinking of herself. This act, so often lost in the sparse lines of historical records, reveals more about who she was than any title ever could. She was a woman of extraordinary heart. Her kindness was not a fleeting gesture. Those who knew her remembered Anna Bates not only as intelligent, but deeply compassionate. She had the rare ability to truly listen, to empathize. She connected effortlessly with people society often labeled as different. Those with unusual appearances or lives that set them apart gravitated toward her, and she welcomed them like family. Anna became a true traveler. Her path led her through exhibition halls and across stages on both sides of the Atlantic. From Europe to the United States, she journeyed across continents, astonishing and enchanting audiences wherever she went. She returned to her home in Nova Scotia only occasionally, as if her roots had grown far beyond her native soil. On one of her European tours in 1863, Anna met Queen Victoria herself, and, quite unexpectedly, a friendship blossomed. They were not simply acquaintances. Anna was not merely a novelty at court. They were women who understood each other. Perhaps the Queen saw in Anna something beyond her height and fame. Perhaps she sensed the presence of a truly remarkable soul. They were so different that friendship between them seemed impossible. And yet, fate has a taste for paradoxes. Anna stood tall, quite literally. Her striking height defied conventional notions of femininity, and that's exactly what made her unforgettable. She didn't fit the mold, and therein lay her magic. Behind the dazzling lights of stage and circus, she was a woman who captivated both audiences and admirers alike. It's said she received more than one marriage proposal, but Anna always declined. To be a performer meant living under the spotlight, but also in the shadow of doubt. How could she tell whether someone loved her truly or was chasing fame and fortune? She learned to keep her guard up, but one day that guard slipped. During a tour stop in Halifax, Anna met Martin Van Buren Bates, a man every bit as extraordinary as she was. Standing well over 7 feet tall and weighing nearly 500 pounds, he looked like a figure from myth or legend. He saw her, and in that moment, so did his keen-eyed impresario. What followed was a new chapter in Anna's life. A story where love and career were bound together in a single thread. They fell in love quickly, as though they had spent their entire lives moving toward one another. In 1871, in London, Anna and Martin married. Their union was not just a personal triumph, but a historical milestone. More than 150 years later, they remain the tallest married couple ever recorded. with a combined height of 15 feet 8 inches, a Guinness World Record that still stands. But the story was never just about inches and statistics. This was a real-life fairy tale, and every fairy tale needs a queen. In theirs, that role belonged to Queen Victoria herself. In 1861, Queen Victoria lost her beloved husband, Prince Albert. Grief settled into her life like a shadow behind palace walls and ceremonial gowns. But something in her remained open, to beauty, to joy, to someone else's happiness. When the Queen heard of Anna's love story, she decided to offer a gift worthy of a royal bride. For the wedding, Anna received a magnificent gown, 100 yards of satin, 50 yards of lace, and exquisite embroidery of orange blossoms, all personally chosen by Victoria. Some say it was the Queen herself who arranged for their wedding to take place at the historic St. Martin-in-the-Fields church. Whether that's true or legend, no one can say for certain. But the tale lives on, a symbol of an unlikely connection between two women, so different and yet so alike in their solitude and longing for love. And the Queen's kindness didn't end there. Later, Anna was invited to Buckingham Palace, not as a performer, but as a guest, as someone whose story had touched the heart of the Queen herself. Anna Bates, born Anna Swan, journeyed from a circus performer hiding her weariness behind stage makeup to a woman whose love was honored by royalty. Her story is more than a biography. It's a tale of dignity, faith, and the quiet power of the extraordinary. Behind the brilliance of her dazzling smile lay a whole world, a world of hopes, dreams, and unspoken fears. Victoria, like a heroine from another era, received a ring adorned with a cluster of diamonds, while her fiancé was gifted a gold watch with a chain. These gifts were more than just beautiful objects. They symbolized the beginning of a new life, a promise of a future filled with hope and expectation. Their journey was just beginning, and soon fate brought them into contact with the royal family. Twice they met the Queen herself, and faces of other aristocrats appeared on the horizon. It seemed as if destiny itself gently guided them, opening doors to a world full of grandeur and possibility. A year after their wedding, Victoria and Martin bought a home. Not just any house, but a true palace in Seville, Ohio. High ceilings and wide doors, custom designed to accommodate their impressive stature, created a sense of spaciousness and light. The main rooms breathed freedom, air, and brightness, while the back of the house, where servants and guests stayed, remained cozy and familiar, like a small world within the larger one. But life is rarely a perfect picture. Traveling with various troops and touring brought not only excitement but also bitter lessons. Victoria and Martin faced injustice. They were even thrown off a train car without explanation, leaving everyone puzzled by such cruelty. Yet Victoria possessed remarkable strength. No matter how hard fate struck, she found the light within herself again, able to love and find joy in life, as if an inner fire never went out. Her love extended not only to people but also to animals. Victoria had a deep hatred for cruelty, especially toward horses, refusing to accept races or any form of violence against these noble creatures. Together with Martin, they cared for cows and draft horses on their farm and took in aging circus animals, offering them the peace and kindness they deserved. Family memories tell of a little mischief maker who once appeared in their home, a monkey named Buttons, who knew how to stir up a commotion among guests and add a touch of fun to their lives. Yet behind these bright moments lay heavy trials. In 1872, Victoria and Martin became parents, but their happiness was fragile. Their first daughter, a huge and rare baby weighing 18 pounds, did not survive childbirth. It was a wound hard to heal, a loss that shattered the heart of a young mother who was still learning how to live and love. 6 years later, fate tested Victoria once again with an unimaginable challenge. In January 1879, after long hours of painful labor, doctors faced both a miracle and a tragedy. The baby was so enormous that no medical instrument could assist. Gently and carefully, They placed a bandage around his neck and pulled. Into the world came a boy weighing 23 pounds and measuring 75 centimeters, as if he were born not of this world but of legend. Martin later wrote that their son looked as if he were already 6 months old. So extraordinary was this child. But happiness lasted only 11 hours. This giant angel left, leaving behind a profound silence and a pain that words could not soothe. Posthumously, he entered the Guinness World Records as the largest newborn in history. A memory kept alive by numbers, but for Victoria, it was a heartbreak that plunged her into darkness and depression. She shut herself away from the world, withdrew inwardly, and stopped performing, trying to survive this unbearable loss. The story of Victoria Bates is a story of incredible strength, a testament to how even in the darkest times, love and hope continue to live within us. In a world where her height drew astonishment and curiosity, her spirit remained unyielding and deep. Her life is a reminder of how fragile human destiny is and how vital support and compassion are when it feels like the whole world is falling apart. In this quiet, almost unnoticed turn of fate, the inevitable conclusion of her life's journey seemed to draw near. She once tried to return to the circus, the bright lights and the eager audience, but her heart no longer belonged to that world. Soon, she retreated back into the shadows, choosing peace and solitude instead. In the late 1870s, she and her husband Martin decided to leave behind the noise and bustle, seeking refuge in the simple, steady rhythm of life on their own farm. By the spring of 1880, Anna spent nearly all her days working the fields and tending to the household, devoting herself to the land they had nurtured together. Yet even here, their lives held deep meaning. The couple became actively involved in their Baptist church community, faithfully attending services, reading the Bible with sincerity, and finding comfort in their faith. The church even reserved special pews for them, ensuring their comfort during worship. And Anna, as if returning to a youthful dream long thought out of reach, began teaching Sunday school. That dream, once distant and almost unattainable, had finally come true, bringing her quiet joy and purpose. But her health relentlessly failed her. Years of battling tuberculosis and thyroid illness drained her strength until one night, just before her 42nd birthday, her heart simply stopped in her sleep. She never saw another year begin. Her journey ended as quietly as the life she had lived. After her passing, Martin placed a monument on her grave, a lasting symbol of deep love and remembrance. A year later, he remarried and moved away from their Ohio home to be closer to his new wife. Thus closed the final chapter of Anna's life, in silence, filled with cherished memories and enduring sorrow. The life of Anna Bates is not just a story about a woman of extraordinary height. It is the story of a person whose journey left a lasting impression on the hearts of those who knew her and who, decades later, still remember her name. Anna and her husband Martin were connected not only by love but also by a shared, difficult fate. When Martin passed away, he was buried beside Anna and their infant child, a place that became a symbol of their unity and unspoken sorrow. For many years now, a small town in Ohio has carefully preserved the memory of this family. Amid the everyday bustle, there is an exhibit dedicated to Anna and Martin, featuring artifacts that seem to come alive, telling stories of their past lives, dreams, and struggles. Far away in Halifax, there is a museum devoted to Anna, a place where her story found a new home, where descendants of Anna's family continue to care for her legacy, hosting tours and sharing with visitors the tale of this extraordinary woman. It is a memory that lives, breathes, and touches hearts. One curious detail often mentioned in stories and newspaper articles of the time was the way Anna was advertised as a woman taller than 8 feet, a figure that seemed almost unbelievable. In reality, she never quite reached that height, although she came close. But stories sometimes need embellishment, and the press of that era never missed a chance to exaggerate her height to capture the public's attention. Documents from the British Library preserve the promotional posters from those days, bright, somewhat fantastical, declaring Anna the tallest woman in the world. This exaggeration became part of her legend, a symbol of how human history often intertwines with myth, while the real life behind the headlines is even deeper and more touching. Behind those numbers and sensational titles stood a real woman with dreams, fears, and joys, the kind of person whose story invites reflection and stirs something deeply important within us. At a time when the legendary Siamese twins Chong and Eng, dazzling on the London stage, drew crowds of thousands, she shone even brighter and held greater significance. Her name blazed on the posters in the most prominent spot, outshining even these world-famous stars. This fact, quiet yet undeniable, reminds us that she attracted audiences just as powerfully as those celebrities. Her stage was a magnet for many, and her talent a true celebration for both the eyes and the soul.